One of the things that coastal Florida has been struggling with in the last couple of decades is the degradation of water quality, especially in the estuary, from here all the way down to Indian River Lagoon.
Whitney Lab for Marine Bioscience is working to restore water quality and reestablish local fisheries. Daryl Moody has a report.
Dr. Mark Martindale says their team is using new technologies to undo decades of damage.
A lot of it has to do with the fact that the water quality is so poor that the sun doesn't get to the bottom of the ocean, and then the seagrass can't grow. So imagine, the grass not being able to grow in your yard. Nothing can sort of live off of that kind of an environment.
Martindale says they're working to restore the natural equilibrium in the environment.
And that starts off with filter-feeding organisms like clams and oysters. And so we've been repopulating clams and oysters into the Matanzas River and the Indian River Lagoon because they filter 50 gallons of water a day, and that takes harmful algae out of the water column, providing the light to let the seagrass grow.
And Martindale says it's working.
Since we have made some substantial headway and we've started thinking down the line to now repopulating sport fish. Now that the water quality is improved, we can actually repatriate local sport fish like snook and red drum and red snapper and things like that into the local environment.
Whitney Lab teams have reintroduced more than 1 million clams to the Matanzas River and about 30 million more in the Indian River. Martindale says they've also released about 100,000 redfish so far.
Good morning, Flagler County. I'm Rich Carroll. You're listening to Flagler's Morning News on Monday, June 3rd.
A Palm Coast man's been arrested and charged with 10 counts of possessing child pornography after the Flagler County Sheriff's Office was alerted via a cyber tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Flagler County Sheriff Rick Staley.
The Sheriff's Office Major Case Cyber Crimes Unit received a tip about a person possibly downloading child pornography and began an investigation into this pervert. Yesterday, he was arrested on 10 counts of child pornography. He is currently being held in the Green Roof Inn for a $150,000 bond.
James McGill, 33, was arrested after detectives served a search warrant at McGill's home, where he was interviewed and multiple electronics were seized from the residence.
If you're a pervert and likes this type of video voyeurism, we are going to come after you before you escalate and can hurt a child. So beware that we have a very active cyber crimes unit in partnership with state and federal organizations. You will be next.
Flagler County Sheriff Rick Staley. For Flagler's Local Morning News, I'm Karen Johnson.
This local news is a service of Flagler County's Toyota dealer, Beaver Toyota, US 1 St. Augustine, here to wow you.
People are not happy with our representation. They feel like our city officials, council members, mayor is not listening to the needs and the concerns of the residents.
We continue profiling the candidates running for Palm Coast Mayor. Today we hear from Peter Johnson.
The problem is the reckless development and the lack of direction that we're headed in the city.
Johnson says Palm Coast is in the middle of its second population boom in less than 20 years.
The growth has to be measured, though, and it has to be done in a correct manner and an appropriate way for the residents of this town. And quite frankly, we are spending money on pet projects. We're spending money on new park renovations that don't need to be done. We're spending money in every area except for our infrastructure and except for the needs of the current residents.
Johnson says the local tax base is disproportionate to meet the community's needs.
We have a tax base, and you hear different numbers floated around, but you can basically call it 10% commercial industry and 90% residential tax base. So we have a very heavy burden on our residents who are taxpayers. The average in other places is about 30-70. So we're off about 20% on our commercial side.
Johnson says he knows how to fix it.
If we promote Palm Coast in the right ways, I truly think that we could have the areas such as things that we have similarly, European Village, places like that, where there's congregation of lots of locals, because our community is craving community interaction and we lack the opportunity to do that.
For Flagler's Morning News, I'm Daryl Moody.
How do parents shape their children?
Flagler County tax collector and property appraiser Suzanne Johnston said on a recent episode of Business Minds Coffee Chat with host Jay Shear that her mother was a proper woman and a strict mother, but with 4 children.
Mama had us at church. Every time the church doors open, we were there. Maybe she thought that would help. When you got 4 kids, you need all the help you can get.
Johnson said that her mother taught at Flagler Beach Elementary. Her father was different.
Daddy he was more mellow. When he was in the Army, he was a cook in the Army, and so I learned part of my cooking from him. First thing he taught me to cook was brown gravy. I have got that mastered. I love to cook.
Johnson said her father was strict too, though. She said that she was a wild child, and he kept her in line. You can listen to Business Minds Coffee Chat with host Jay Shear here on WNZF, Saturday mornings at 8:30 and on the Flagler radio app. Tomorrow, what was this county employee like as a child? From the WNZF newsroom, I'm Deb Albertson.
And now you're up to date on Flagler's Morning News. I'm Rich Carroll.
And now, Mike Lee Show with your WNZF local sports update.
Nothing says hockey like the Florida sunshine, with in-state teams making the Stanley Cup final the previous 4 seasons. The Florida Panthers had a chance to extend that streak to 5 against the New York Rangers in Sunrise for Game 6 Saturday, already leading 3-2 in the waning seconds of the first.
Here's Bennett with room, left side, Rodriguez, Bennett a shot, and he scores! Top shelf off the bar and the Panthers strike first.
Sam Bennett scores for the 3rd straight game. Up 1-0, Florida entered the 3rd undefeated in their last 69 games when entering the final period with a lead.
And they score! It was sent backdoor for Tarasenko, and the Panthers take a 2-0 lead.
Vladdy Tarasenko scored for the first time in 8 games. Rangers wing Artemi Panarin scored a goal too little too late.
The final seconds tick away, and the Florida Panthers are going to the Stanley Cup final for the 2nd straight year.
All calls WQAM Miami. The quest for their first cup begins Saturday. Baseball yesterday, the Tampa Bay Rays looked to avoid a 3-game sweep in Baltimore. The O's led 3-2 in the top of the 8th.
The pitch. He swings and drives it deep in the air to right center field. This is headed toward the wall and off the wall for extra bases. Palacios rounding 3rd. He's scoring. Rosario coming home. It's a 2-run go-ahead double for Jose Siri.
More late-inning heroics from Jose Siri, and Tampa avoids the broom 4-3. The Marlins had a chance to send another Rangers team home from South Florida with a series loss, but for the 2nd straight day, they were blanked by Texas 6-0. The Rays start a 3-game series in Miami tomorrow. The Tortugas start a trip to St. Lucie Tuesday. Bulldog wrestlers competed in the Florida Freestyle Championships. Alicia Villar and reigning high school state champion Jocelyn Johnson took home gold medals. Pirates soccer player Diego Bernardi made it official, signing his commitment letter to Division II Shawan over the weekend. This is your home for local sports, with updates Mondays and Fridays. From the WNZF Sports Desk, I'm Mike Lucio.